Hi, everybody. I hope you guys are all excited for our amazing episode with Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor. And if you guys aren't too familiar with her, go and check out her absolutely viral video that went out when she did her TED Talk. She literally put TED Talks on the map. I think hers was the first video, the first TED Talk that went completely viral. She's had millions and millions of hits on it. Just put in Jill Bolte Taylor and TED Talk and My Stroke of Insight, and you can see she does an amazing recount of her experience of going through a left-sided stroke where literally her left side of her brain was shutting down and she was getting pulled directly into the right side of the brain. And she kind of shares her experience of what it was like to be literally catapulted into this state of euphoria and oneness with all things and infinite love, and then kind of going back into the left side of the brain on what needed to practically get done, like call the hospital and take care of things. And this experience of her going back and forth. After that TED Talk went crazy, she wrote her book on My Stroke of Insight and then broke down all of the lessons that she learned from that. And now this is about 13 years later. She wrote another book called Whole Brain Living, which came out just a couple of years ago. And she helps to walk us through the different aspects of the brain and how we can create very specific relationships with those different pieces in order to live really a full life and get out of the programming and the conditioning that we often get stuck in. And how do we access those areas like that she did through that experience with a stroke? She helps us actually do that on our own without having to go through a stroke. So I think you guys are going to find this really, really fascinating. Her book is fabulous. Dr. Jill is just a wonderful, wonderful person. We so enjoyed being able to talk to her. Just an absolute gift. And I think you're just going to find that she's got so much to say and just another perspective on how we can make really significant changes in our life and live a life that has more meaning and purpose. Speaking about meaning and purpose, we've done a lot of conversations in the past around choice and our ability to actually make different choices and access that part of us that really is looking out for the highest good for us. And one of the groups that I've interviewed a couple times over the years has been the Heart Math Institute, because I really think they do a really wonderful job of literally creating a technology that we can measure heart rate variability and see if we are in this coherent state where our brain and our hearts are actually communicating from a neurochemical perspective. And what they found is that when you are in those states, you make much better choices. So a lot of times when Tay and I have to make big choices, we will make sure we are in that state before we make those choices, because if we're not and we're acting from more of that stressed part of ourselves, we're not tapping into that insight and that wisdom and that intuition, and we often don't make such great decisions. So this has been something that's come up a lot for a long time, and I wanted to bring some awareness to an absolutely free resource that I created a little while back called Accessing Your Heart's Wisdom Meditation. And I'm going to post a link here. Go there and you can download the meditation for free. It takes you through the exercise that we do to help get into a heart-brain coherent state. And then the next step of it actually takes you where you ask specific questions, and you are actually asking your heart and you're asking for that intuitive wisdom to surface and to give you answers. And so this is a really great exercise I think everybody can use, even if you just use it as a meditation to get into a coherent state. And then take it the next step farther in the second part of the meditation, where you actually can pose specific questions to yourself and see what answers surface. You'll get more of like a tangible sensation. In the meditation, we walk through the different ways that your heart may be speaking to you, or that that intuitive guidance actually surfaces. So amazing resource that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. I'll put a link there. That's actually on the drjasonloken.com website, and you would just click under integrated medicine and you'll see it right there, but I'll put a link for you. The other free resource that I don't think people know about too much is I created a 7-part mini series called Dissolving Origins of Disease, because I just found, going through all of these interviews and just what I've seen clinically, there's certain categories that I think really must be addressed and looked at in order to really heal from disease and turn on that natural healing ability within the body. So I'll put a link for that too. If you just go to the inspirehealthpodcast.com, scroll down, I think about 3 levels down, you'll see that. It's a free download as well. It's a 7-part video mini series that I did where I do an overview of a specific topic, and then I might link you to specific video clips that I think outline that in much more detail. So again, a totally free resource, amazing information there that you guys can all dive into. And lastly, if you haven't checked it out yet, go and check out my newest ebook on natural first aid essentials for every family. I go through 6 major categories, and we look at everything from tummy troubles to cold, flu, and immune support to fever comfort, ear and sinus congestion, bumps, bruises, burns, and scrapes, bee stings, bites, and rashes. And we cover all of that, and I basically show you what are a lot of the things that we do. How can you work with a lot of these first aid scenarios for yourself and for your children, for your family, using natural solutions. So whether that is specific supplements that I think are important to have, or home remedies that you can make with easy stuff that you can find at your grocery store, there's a lot of stuff you can do on your own to mitigate the vast majority of first aid scenarios that you guys come in contact with. I really want people to feel more empowered around their health, and a part of that is to have the information and the know-how, and then actually prepare yourself a first aid kit that's a natural first aid kit, and have your stuff on hand and know how to use it. So when the time comes, you can go right there and start to integrate some of these things. If you are a parent, I definitely find you want to have this stuff on hand for your kids so that you know what to do right away. So many things you can do will mitigate downstream problems and nip them in the bud before they ever become a problem. Like, for example, if your child has a sore throat or some sinus congestion, you need to get on that stuff right away before it eventually becomes more of a problem that might lead to like an earache, or then they need to go to antibiotics or something along those lines. A lot of things you can do right off the bat to try to prevent downstream problems. So that's kind of the goal with that book, and put the power back in your hands. So I'll put a link for that too. Um, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. We so loved talking to Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor and all of the guests that we are talking to her. This is a really fascinating experience to just pay attention to these different episodes. A lot of the information in here is likely going to challenge different beliefs that we've got. We've all been brought up with specific beliefs and ways of thinking about life and death and afterlife, and we tie it with spirituality or religion. Our goal here is to just bring lots of information that we think has value to it, see what lands for you, see what doesn't, and notice where we get triggered. If we come across something that really doesn't resonate with us or kind of shakes our understanding of something, one thing I've been really curious in myself is to notice, when do I get sort of triggered? When do I feel like, oh, that's just wrong because it doesn't fit with my belief system of something else? There's nothing wrong with that, but I think it's interesting to pay attention to. More and more, I am really exploring the idea of not strongly accepting or rejecting anything, and knowing that we kind of live in this fluidic model that things change depending on the context of the situation. Things will change. I will have a different idea of, my beliefs may shift from moment to moment. I want them to be able to expand and shift. So stay open, stay curious. When you feel yourself shutting down too much, maybe just check to see why you're shutting down, or why does that not resonate so much. And again, not good or bad. It's just to be curious about it. All of this is to facilitate more expansion and understanding for all of us. So share your comments. Thank you so much for those people that are sharing your comments. It always helps to create a conversation, because I think if you have comments, a lot of other people have the same question, or maybe are having different questions, and it facilitates a conversation to start to develop. So thank you so much for watching these episodes. We think they're really important and timely. And feel free to please share the information if you think others would benefit from it. Like, subscribe, all of that helps us a lot in getting the information out. So thank you so much, and I hope you're enjoying the series. Talk to you guys soon. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Inspire Health podcast. And this is our 3rd episode in our newest series called Life, Death, and Beyond, Exploring Our Greater Reality. And we are absolutely super, super excited to have Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor with us today. And if you haven't seen, Dr. Jill is probably best known for having the absolutely most viral TED Talk that I think you put out back in 2008. It's had like over 27.5 million views now. And this is really where she documented her experience of having a left hemisphere brain stroke and actually being able to go through the whole experience. And particularly because Dr. Jill is a neuroscientist, she was able to see it from that perspective and sort of make sense of the experience that you were going through. But if you haven't watched the video, I'll put a link to that because it's absolutely a must watch. It will, and incredibly moving. I know at the end of that, I always get welled up and moved to tears with it because I feel like it just touches such a profound depth of who I think we absolutely are. So I think this is like 12 or 13 years later, Dr. Jill, you've written another book called Whole Brain Living. And this is really designed to help us better choose who and how we want to be in the world, regardless of the external circumstances that we find ourselves in. And what an absolutely timely book to have out, I think, in where we currently are in the world. I think this is information that everybody can absolutely benefit from. And we feel blessed to have Dr. Jill with us today to be able to share her insights with us. So thank you so much for joining our show, Jill.
Thank you. I'm very excited. I think that our subjects resonate very well together. So I'm excited about our conversation. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
And that first TED Talk that Jason was speaking of is based on your first book, My Stroke of Insight. And for those of you who are not familiar, we highly recommend it. It's we've actually aired that video of TED Talks based on your book numerous times, even during the retreats that we've had in the past, because it definitely rattles people in a different way. And yeah, it's definitely very moving.
Thank you. Thank you.
What's really neat is in this series, we have lots of different people that we're speaking with, and a lot of them have actually had near-death experiences and been over to the other side and come back. And partly what we want to do is hear what, because it really is quite a transformative experience. You know, I remember a teacher of mine once, Dr. David Hawkins, would talk about near-death experiences were an extremely high state of consciousness that you kind of get catapulted into. And so people come back with certain knowings because it's so experiential too. And so they know it with such a sense of certainty because they felt it. And you went through such a unique experience because you literally went through almost the death of an aspect of your brain and then again the rebirth of it, and we're able to kind of see it from both sides. So I'd love maybe just to give a bit of an overview for people that aren't super aware of that experience, maybe just briefly what kind of went on with that and what your biggest insights were that you took back with you when you came back out of it and healed.
Yeah, certainly. So first of all, I've never seen my experience as a near-death experience because I didn't have any of the normal packaging. I wasn't outside of myself looking at myself. I didn't have the light. I didn't have the visitation. I didn't have any of that. But what I did have was, I was growing up, I was a pretty much right hemisphere dominant person. I was very playful. I was very creative and open, very musical, very athletic, very artistic. And those are skill sets pretty much of the right hemisphere. And I had a brother who was diagnosed with schizophrenia, who was kind of just this side of genius. We didn't know he was going to have schizophrenia when he grew up. All we knew was he was a top academic performer. So because he did that, I didn't have to do that because that satisfied my parents' desire to have a highly achieving child, right? So it was really nice for me. I could just live my life. And my poor mother wondered if my left hemisphere would ever turn on. And so I go to college and then I took anatomy and I fell madly in love with the subject of anatomy. And so my left hemisphere turned on and I was fascinated with the body, with the brain, with the tissue, just with physiology, how it all works. And so I wanted to be a researcher and I wanted to specialize in how does our brain create our perception of reality? Because at a biological level, my brother was the closest thing to me that existed in the universe, but he was very different from me in his perception of reality, and then how he interacted with the world. So I studied at a cellular level what is going on between the differences of a normal control brain, which I considered mine to be, and the brains of people with schizophrenia, schizoaffective, bipolar disorder, panic disorder, anxiety, and OCD. So I was looking at the cellular differences in how our brain was wired. And then, as irony has it, the universe says, be careful what you want to know, little girl. And so, I have this major hemorrhage in the left half of my brain, and it takes offline my identity, my individuation, my ego center, my language centers, a group of cells that defines the boundaries of where I begin and where I end. That goes offline because that's a group of cells in the left hemisphere, as well as the linearity of time. I had no past, I had no future. I shifted into the consciousness of my right hemisphere, which is all a right here, right now, big as the universe experience. So I that was what happened in response to that hemorrhage. But I got to watch that left hemisphere circuit by circuit breakdown through the eyes of a scientist, because I think in circuits, and I could visualize when things were gone and offline. So I knew what I had lost. I could watch this hemorrhage going on inside of my brain. And then when I woke up on the afternoon of the stroke, I was absolutely completely disabled. I could not walk, talk, read, write, or recall any of my life. And in that experience, having lost the identity as Jill Bolte Taylor, neuroanatomist, all my credentials, all the details about me, in the absence of that, I and the cells that left defined the boundaries of where I begin and ended, I felt as big as the universe, and I was completely 100% in the present moment. So for me, I did not have at that point this near-death experience of going beyond that, because my right hemisphere was still functioning. So what I gained was this real insight into what is in that left hemisphere, what is in that right hemisphere when that left hemisphere is no longer inhibiting it, and then what did I need to do in order to use my right hemisphere, which I could still, for example, think in pictures. So I could have reconstructed for you, sculpted for you an abdomen, a human abdomen, but I lost the left hemisphere language to name the different parts of the stomach. So I could then use my right hemisphere to rebuild that left hemisphere circuitry until I really became aware of, okay, what does that really mean when you rebuild those skill sets?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fascinating. One thing I was wondering, Jill, is after when, I mean, you talk about it so beautifully in the TED Talk, when you were in that state of that, just that oneness and that expansiveness, because I mean, it was like that was all there was almost at that time. You were fully in that. Do you still find, like, now that everything is kind of healed and you're kind of everything's pulled together, are you still able to connect to the same expansiveness and oneness? Is that something that you're able to still do without having to go through that type of an experience?
Absolutely. So, in fact, my agreement with myself during this process of recovery was that I liked it there. I like it in the present moment. It's peaceful, it's blissful, it's curious, it's creative, it's innovative, it's possibilities, and it's exciting. I love being in the right hemisphere of the right here, right now experience of being connected to all that is. So for me, my agreement was I will do what I need to do, and I will sacrifice just enough of how the right brain perceives being a part of everything to be able to regain the function of those circuits so that I can speak language. I can regain the boundaries that I perceive myself to begin and end at where the air meets my skin. I'm willing to rebuild those circuits, but when those personalities came back online that wanted to be dominant, it was like, no, we're not doing that anymore, because the two hemispheres have completely different value structures. The left hemisphere, where me, the ego, I am Jill Bolte Taylor. I'm a neuroanatomist. I'm an author, blah, blah, blah. Here's my phone number. Here's my details. That's all in my left hemisphere. So it's a perception around me where I, the individual, am the center of my own universe. But in the right hemisphere, I don't have that perception of where I begin and end. I don't have Jill Bolte Taylor and all of her details. All I have is the experience of the present moment without the right, wrong, good, bad definition of that other hemisphere. So I was in agreement that I would sacrifice as enough of as little as possible of the right experience to become and to regrow, redevelop, rewire the left hemisphere, but I would not let the left hemisphere become dominant again. So I actually spend most of my time very fluid with my schedule, very open to experiential. I still do my art. I still do my music. Everybody calls me a pig pen. I'm a mess. I'm being creative and whatever. But then, I have this wonderful skill set that got me here on time. Right. So I regained that function, but that's not my dominant me anymore. That is in service to my bigger picture experience of being a part of the whole and knowing that I am connected to all that is, and I am a part of humanity, and what I want to serve is the bigger picture of humanity, not me, the individual.
Oh, that's beautiful. It reminds me a little bit in just different ways. Sometimes we have different speakers from different perspectives and kind of talking about allowing the, different conversations around whether we're talking about the heart and the different sort of information that can come from the heart versus the intellect, or the true self versus the ego mind identity sort of aspect. And it was this idea of allowing the true self, or the sense that comes from the heart, to actually imbue the intellect with what to do. It sounds like you've really married those very well, because a lot of times I think we operate almost the opposite of that.
Yeah. Yes, that's true. But I'm a true believer, having had this experience, that the heart consciousness of compassion and openness and love is the right hemisphere thinking tissue.
Mm-hmm.
Every ability we have brain tissue that performs that function. We can move our body because we have motor cells that perform that function. Wipe them out, we can't do that. I can be compassionate or empathic because I have cells. That's their job, for me to be able to mirror your experience, feel that, bring it internally, reflect upon that, and connect with you. Because without that, we cannot have attachment. So, and when we think about the ego self, or the me, the identity of that left thinking tissue, the generally what we call the authentic self or the true self is still anatomically a part of who I am. It's that right thinking tissue, my ability to have that. And when we have people who have stroke in that part of their brain, and they write to me, their biggest complaint is they can't find God. And they can't find God because they've wiped out the cells that give us, the human, the capacity to have that experience of connecting to that feeling that allows us to have that perception that we are as big as the universe in relationship to a higher being. So again, for me, I keep everything. I didn't go beyond that skull, but I deeply explored what's going on in there. So that consciousness, for me, it's always there. We always have that true self, that authentic self, that connection to something that is greater than me, the individual. But yet me, the individual, is still a true me, because anatomically it's still a part of who I am. So I think there's 4 of us in here that are completely neuroanatomically based on the cells inside of our head.
Yeah, well, that's what you in your book you talk about the 4 different characters that make up the brain's team. So maybe we can touch on the 4 different characters and where those are specifically located and how they sort of operate. What are their jobs?
Yeah. So as you think about the evolution of the mammal, because we are mammals, and we have unique tissue that is placed up on top, which is that thinking tissue. But the reptile is, if we look at this as the brain stem, we have that. That's the reptilian brain. It's got the same kind of functions. And that reptilian brain is pretty much on off switches. I'm hungry, I eat, I'm done. I'm thirsty, I drink, my brain tells me to turn that off. So the reptile is these on-off switches of awareness. And then on top of that, the difference between the reptile and the mammal is the addition of emotional limbic tissue. So the emotional limbic tissue is bilateral. We have two of them, one in the right hemisphere and one in the left hemisphere. And then the difference between a typical mammal and a human is the addition of new tissue, which is our thinking tissue. So we actually have these four modules of cells, two emotional and two thinking. And the fundamental differences are going to be what's going on in the right hemisphere versus what's going on in the left hemisphere. And so when you look at just the emotional tissue, this tissue is of the present moment. It brings information in through the present moment, and it goes straight into that limbic tissue, and it places a filter on how do I feel about what's happening in the present moment. But the limbic tissue in the left hemisphere does this absolutely miraculously amazing thing. And it takes information about the present moment and it steps out of the present moment. How on earth does that happen, right? Even at a cellular level, it steps out of the present moment into the past. So I, as an individual in that left hemisphere, that tissue gives us a past and a future. So linearity of thought is beginning in that left emotional tissue. So then we add thinking tissue on top of both of those. So in the right hemisphere, which is the experience of the right hemisphere, what does it feel like right now? What does it feel like to have earrings in, or these glasses on my nose, or the temperature against my skin? And then so it's about emotion, and then the new tissue added on top is thinking in the present moment. And in the present moment, it's a perfect moment. And this is where we perceive ourselves in the absence of the beginning and end definition of that left hemisphere. So this is when we become big as the universe. We're in the present moment. We're completely aware. It's like, oh my God, I'm alive. I mean, there's this awe and wonder that I exist at all. And wow, so this is a deep sense of gratitude, and we're designed for that. So that's where if we wipe that out in stroke survivors, they can't find God. So this is our capacity to have that experience. But in the left hemisphere, as soon those emotional cells step out of the present moment, they give us a past, they give us a future, so they give us a linearity of time. And then when the thinking tissue comes on top, it's designed to regulate and modulate what's going on below it. So it also then has a past and it has a future, and this becomes our rational thinking brain. So when I look at it, and of course I brought you a little model of a brain, as I look at this, then the left thinking tissue, this part that goes to work. It likes to organize the external world. This is about our relationship with a civilized world and how I get myself to fit into it. So I have language, so I can communicate in the external world. I have definition and boundaries, so I know where I begin and where I end. I have deep inside, I won't go there yet, but I have all motor skill, and this is my refined abilities. This is going to define what is right, what is wrong, what is good, what is bad. This is our A-type personality. This is the part that goes to work. This is the part that got us here on time. So because it likes to control people, places, and things. So I call that character one, left thinking. We all have this tissue. Some of us are more developed with this than others. But we all have that tissue. Wipe out those cells, and I have no relationship with language. I lose the boundaries of where I begin and end, and my experience of interacting with the external world. I don't have a right, wrong, good, bad anymore, because that's what that tissue does. So I encourage people to name that part of who they are. Have you named your character ones? By the way, I'm just curious.
Not as yet, but we may consider doing that after this episode.
Maybe we'll post them. We'll post the names of our different characters.
Oh, absolutely. I call that one Helen. It's Hell on Wheels. She gets it done. right? She's busy, right? We all have this part of ourselves. And you know your friends. Just think about your friends. Some of them are very structured, very organized. The stapler goes in the place where the stapler belongs, right? And it cares that everybody in the house puts the stapler back because it thrives in that order. So that's character one. That's the left thinking tissue of our brain. The left emotion of our brain, again, these are the beautiful cells that took information about the present moment and took it into a past and gave us linearity across time. So this is going to be all the emotion from our lifetime. So this is any trauma that little Jill had, any trauma, any addiction that we have. It's that tissue in there of the insular cortex. So this is the left emotional tissue, and this is where all the pain from our past is located. I have no pain in the present moment, right here, right now. I'm having an experience, but my pain, any trauma, any experiences I've had, good or bad, happened. Are located in this tissue. So when we go through psychoanalysis, we're just routinizing in little character two, little character two, little character two, and that can work if you're calling on the other healthy parts of your brain to interact with that part of your brain so that it can actually heal instead of just constantly revisiting trauma. Yeah, we all have that pain, don't we?
That was really well explained. From your perspective, I guess when I'm hearing all of that and I think about all of these older time-tested strategies where people talk about meditation and yoga and all these things, a lot of this is really designed to try to help us access more of that right brain part, which ultimately I would say a lot of people have a lot of hard time trying to do that. What are we born into the world with certain areas more dominant than others? Is it a combination of what we are born with versus how they are nurtured as we go up, the society that we're currently living in? What are the things that would dictate sort of why certain characters and personalities tend to be much more dominant than some of the other ones?
Well, I think everything that you just said is true. Biologically, we come in with some wiring. Environmentally, that, if you have a parent who is an extreme character one, who cares that you grow up to be a very uniform, conforming child, you're going to become more of that. Simply because that you're going to learn very quickly, because we're all born with this genius brain. And if that's what it's going to take in order to get your adoration and your love and your support, then I'm going to fit in the box that you want me to be in. Right. So where if you're more creative, if I have a parent who's got a disaster zone, which is a wonderful art space, and I'm allowed to go be in that mess all the time, then that circuit is going to be environmentally stimulated. And at the same time, we live in a society that values the value structure of the left hemisphere. We are skewed to the left hemisphere. Our government, our educational system, it's all about how do we develop the skill sets of those left hemisphere, and a part of that is competition and on that hierarchy. So we have a hierarchy in government, we have a hierarchy in education, we have a hierarchy in our classroom. Everything is a competition to get to the next level. But I think that equally as important is as we look at all of that, I'm a cellular structure. And change is happening constantly. And as me, the individual, becomes skewed toward the value structure of I want more, then I want to be higher on all those hierarchies than you. And that's going to be well developed. So as a society, if we're functioning, starting out with a skewed to the left society, and we want to get into the right brain in order to find some peace in there, well, we use meditation. Meditation will give us a tool to preoccupy character one, language centers. Usually we're following on some imagery. Imagery pulls us a little bit off into the left hemisphere. We can repeat a mantra or we can repeat a prayer, which is preoccupying what's going on in that character one. So it's not thinking about, what I need to do tomorrow or what I'm going to do tonight for dinner, in all of the planning and the scheduling. So essentially, we're preoccupying what's going on in the left so that we can open up the right. But what I love about whole brain living is it gives you a roadmap to what you're actually looking for. Where am I going? It's really hard to just jump in a car. How many of us are willing? Now, there is a population that does this. I'm one of them. We're wanderers. You jump in a car, you have no clue where you're going, but 3 days later, you got to be home, right? And then it's like, well, where did I go, right? It's an ongoing state of exploration. So if we're going to meditate and we don't know, what does it feel like when I arrive? Where am I going? What am I trying to achieve? Then I can have some directions. But if I don't know where I'm going, it's hard. But if I know that my little character 3 is a part of my brain and it's in the present moment, and I do the things I need to do in order to get myself into the present moment, and then I start engaging in activities that stimulates my character 3, then boom, I just arrived. I didn't have to work so hard to get there. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's really about having a roadmap. It's not just about, I'm trying to do this, I'm using my yoga, I'm using my meditation, I'm using my tools, I'm wearing the right outfit, right? I'm going to the right studios, all that. But I'm still there and I'm doing my yoga and I'm thinking about, oh, damn, I forgot to do this. I need to put that on my to-do list when I get off of this. Okay, give myself a mnemonic so I can remember all the things I have to do when I'm out of here, right? I mean, it's just, how do you shut down? Well, if I know that that's my character 1 and I give her an identity, and it's like, okay, I call her Helen. Helen, I'm going to set you down for a minute. I'm going to go and I'm going to be character 4. I'm going to shift into the consciousness of my right thinking brain. She has a name, Queen, because we're all big as the universe, right? So Queen, Toad, because I'm a little bit goofy and I live on a boat half the year. So that's my little lily pad. So Queen Toad is my character 4. And Queen Toad, boom, I can go there just like that because I know who she is. I know what she feels like. I know how she perceives. I know how to get there because I know that part of my identity.
That's fascinating.
And that's exactly what I was thinking when I was going through your book, is it really is a roadmap. And I do find, as much as I love a lot of the other teachings, I do find like sometimes people can be in some of those different teachings for decades and not get very far with them because they're just, the roadmap's not there. So I find like they're just kind of going all over the place. So I really like the way you break that down. And is part of why it works so well because we are
a left brain society. Like,
well,
we need things categorized and identifiable
and affordable.
Mm-hmm.
But not too affordable. It's part of the marketing gig. But again, because we're there, I think that it really boils down to this kind of thinking says, first of all, neuroanatomically, these are cells in my brain. Well, we all have the brain, right? So this is in my brain. And I can know my character 1 really well. Most of us know that part of ourselves. I don't know anybody who's never met their character 2. And if they can't find their character 2, they need to speak to their partner or spouse, right? Because they'll tell them
they'll tell them all about it.
Exactly. So character 1 and character 2 are easy to identify. Character 3, if character 1 was brought up in an environment or whatever the influences were that we talked about, and character 1 thinks that character 3 and being in the present moment and play and creativity is a waste of time and a waste of energy, then it will actually inhibit through that corpus callosum any of that behavior. So based on, and that's part of why I think whole brain living as this structure works so well, because you can map out who is your character 1. What does she do well? What is she like, or he? Who likes your character 1? Actually build the neural network. There are certain people who really like your character 1. And there are really people who when you're in your little character 2 and you're sad or you're hurt or you're scared or you're whatever, you're going to reach out to certain people, right? You're not going to reach out to other people. So who is that network? Who do you call to self-soothe you, to soothe you with their character 4? who do you call because you need a distraction? And it's like, come on, I need to go for a walk, or let's go play tennis because I need to get in my body and I need to get away from what's going on. Or if you're in your little pain of your character too, you might not want to just bitch and moan with another character too. So you got friends who you know you can call, and they're going to do that with you, right? So once you really know these four characters of yourself, build that network so that you can see the neural network of your externalization of what's going on inside of yourself. And that's pure power, because then it's like, okay, well, I just got really bad news that a friend of mine has a form of cancer. Well, in 3 minutes, I have an interview. So even though my little character two is hard as breaking, I can't be my little character two in this moment. I got to show up as my character one, and I have to give an interview. Right. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we're constantly, they're all like a big soup inside of our head. But when we learn to identify these conversations internalized, then it's like, okay, in the next moment, who do I want to be? And we have the power to choose moment by moment who and how we want to be. And that is not saying ever, I will never say just bypass your character to pain. You have to go into that pain, because it is from that pain which growth and learning happens. So it serves as this magnificent tool, but a lot of us would like to cut our little character two out because, it's not our most pleasant self. But it is in that lack of pleasantness that it is teaching us very important lessons.
Yeah. I really love the concept of the personalities, because it's like, if you're wanting to develop close relationships with people, you've got to put a little bit of time into it. You have to kind of nurture that and support it. And when I think of it from a neural pathway kind of point of view, you're essentially, through the repetition of even investing the time and the energy to get to know each one of these personalities, you're going to strengthen the connection to them, so that then when you do need to bring them up, you've kind of got a stronger pathway and neural network because you've practiced it, you've reinforced it right. over and over again. So just like anything, where if you don't, if you're gonna, I'm just thinking, and I'd love to get a bit more insight around addiction too, because that's almost like a whole nother layer of it that gets challenging for people. But I think what's important for people to pick up from that too, which I love about, is that you're breaking it down into really like 4 pretty user-friendly categories. Get to know them, invest the time, and strengthen those relationships. And then at that time, whoever you need, you can call on, and you've got a very powerful connection to them to be able to bring it in. I guess so often the time, if we're not breaking them up like that and really nurturing those relationships, we're probably going on autopilot and nurturing the same one over and over and over again. And that's why it becomes so dominant.
Exactly. Yeah. The beauty of neurons is the more often you run a brain circuit, the stronger that circuit becomes. And the stronger it becomes, then it begins to run on automatic. And that's how we create new habitual thinking or emotional patterns. This is this by looking at all 4 characters and really embodying them, it absolutely changes your relationships, not just inside of your own head with yourself, because now you have choice. Wow, who doesn't want choice, right? That's key to freedom. But now I'm looking at my partner and my spouse and my kids and my parents and the people I work with. And if there's 4 of me and there's 4 of them, that means in any relationship, there's 8 of us. So all of a sudden it's like, well, why is it that interpersonal skills are so hard for humans? And we're just, relationships are what they are, and the divorce rate is what it is. Well, it's like, because there's 8 in every relationship, and certain combinations work. Oh, well, maybe when one of them's being a 1 and the other's being a 3 and bringing life to the party, and the other was creating order. Well, that works in the beginning because the character 1 finds the character 3 playful, and everybody wants to laugh, and we want to celebrate in the present moment until we're in relationship. And now it's like, now I want you to put the stapler back where it belongs. What's wrong with you? Right. And so then it's in really looking at these dynamics of 4 and 4. And so you're right. For when it comes to having deep relationships now, when I call my dearest friends, I say, how is your character 1? And most of them, I know the names of their characters, and I will ask very specifically, and they will tell me very specifically. And it's like literally within 2 minutes, I know all about how my friend has been for the last couple of months because we have just cut through a ton of distracted language and gone straight to what do each of these characters value and what are they struggling with and what is going well for them. And wow, I mean, it's a beautiful form of communication.
Oh, such a powerful support for couples, and not even couples, but and parents with their kids. I mean, gosh, I mean, how many times do you have a conversation? You can just tell you're on different path. You're totally working on different sides, and you're not speaking the same language.
Right. Yeah, and especially like inside of a coupledom, if you've got a need, let's say all of a sudden I've moved into my character two, and I'm unhappy, and if somebody comes in with their character one and they want to fix it, because that's what character one does, it wants the solution, it wants to fix it, and it's like, I don't want to be fixed in this moment, right? And in a lot of the conversations of men and women, and some of the fundamental differences is men are wired to fix it. Well, why is that? It's because we have been skewed to the left hemisphere, which is character one, let's come in and fix character two. But character two might just need to be held. Character two might just need to be heard. Character two might just need to just be with me and sit in the presence of me. Or I might actually need you to wrap me up in character four love and say, you are so not alone. I've got you. So to be able to say to a partner, partner comes home and says, honey, how are you? And it's like, oh, I got some bad news today. And it's like, well, what do you need? And I can say, I need your C4. And then I just automatically know what that means. Or I need you to get on the phone and fix it, right? But it just brings a level of clarity to life and to how we communicate within ourselves, within our own lives, and with the lives of the people around us. And I truly believe that having this level of awareness, self-awareness, means I get to be who I want to be in any moment. And you can come to me and you can be in your character too. Here's what's going on in our society. A character two is fear, right? Both character twos and character threes, they're the emotional systems, which is fight or flight, both of them. They both have amygdala, they both have hippocampi, they both have cingulate gyri, and it's all about reactivity. Character three is reactivity in the present moment. Character two is reactivity from the past. But let's say that we have somebody who's yelling and screaming. Okay, yeah, we got some of that going on in our society. So they're yelling and screaming. And so I have a decision to make. Their little character two is absolutely 100% triggered. They are exhibiting the worst of themselves. What am I going to do? Am I going to come in as a character one and just kind of make sure everybody's safe and everything's okay and let this person, do their thing, but be kind of a protective of them? Or am I going to get on my little camera now and I'm going to videotape you and then I'm going to post that on the internet for eons of time, shaming you because that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tit for tat you or be completely irresponsible, or might I distract you, or might I just really say, we're okay here, and like just help dissipate the energetic. So we don't have to run on automatic. We don't have to do that. We have the capacity to choose. And then we can observe our own selves, our own triggers, and recognize, why am I putting my trigger out there for my husband to pounce on every time? Why do I do that to him? I'm holding him responsible for my taking things personally so that I set him up for failure. Why am I doing that? And to really look at these relationships and how we're interacting with one another.
That's beautiful, Jill. Yeah, I mean, gosh, you think about how much suffering goes on because of often just issues with communication, like just not being able to speak the same language or reactive rather than being responsive. So, and it's so it brings a person back like as if they're practice it. It really is. You just got to sort of step in and be responsible for your own choices and then build the relationship so that you can actually then use them when the time comes. Because when something like the amygdala gets triggered, I mean, that kind of goes into like survival. So it often takes away the ability to then access kind of the intellect and the thinking part. So when someone is really triggered, how do you help them get out of that emotional reactivity so that they can actually slow things down and actually respond to pull in one of the other personalities that might actually do a better job at that time?
Perfect. So when we are emotionally triggered, from the moment, and so we are, and let me say, we are feeling creatures who think, right? Because from an evolutionary perspective, we come from mammal, and mammal has that reptilian brainstem. It has the mammalian emotional system designed to modulate and regulate what's going on below, and then the thinking tissue comes on last. So we are feeling creatures who think. Okay, so that's really important. So this automatic reactivity, it's designed to, I see a bus coming at me, I get out of the way, right? I'm out on the plains, I have a lion chasing me, I'm in my go, go, go adrenaline rush, climb a tree or try to do something better than that lion's going to do, whatever. So alarm, alarm, alert, alert is how we're wired. And then we have this rational thinking brain, but from the moment we think a thought that stimulates an emotional reactivity, or we have an experience that stimulates that emotional reactivity, from the moment we think the thought, it stimulates the emotion, and then we have a physiological response to what we're thinking and feeling. So let's say I think of you, Jason, and you dumped me 20 years ago, and now every time I think of Jason, it stimulates a negative emotional response, right? And so I think I have this emotional response, and then something like noradrenaline gets dumped into my bloodstream. It floods through me, it flushes out of me, and I move into rage. And every time I think of you now, for the last 20 years, every time you ping into my brain, I have this loop. I run this natural loop. So that from the beginning till the end of the time something is dumped into my bloodstream and it flushes out of me takes less than 90 seconds. Okay, so that takes less than 90 seconds. It's called the 90-second rule. So it's kind of like timeout, right? Why does timeout work? It's because timeout takes me away from the stimulation. Now, a lot of people are saying, oh, I can stay mad for a whole lot longer than 90 seconds. But what you're doing is you're rethinking the thought, re-stimulating the emotion, and re-stimulating so we can stay angry for hours or days or weeks or months or years, or then you're not in my presence anymore. But just now, every time I think of you, Jason, boom, it all explodes again. So, but that emotional reactivity, the automaticity, boom, 90, less than 90 seconds, really about 90 seconds, really about 86 seconds. And you can try it on yourself. The next time you feel yourself starting to engage with trigger, literally look at your watch. And I say look at your watch and watch the amount of time, because it prevents you, again, now we're preoccupying the language center of that character one, so that it's not, rethinking. And watch how long it takes for you to dissipate. And then, that's the moment of power. That's the moment we practice for, because it's in the trigger. And I love this example of little children. A little child is running along and she falls down, right? Splat. And she starts to scream, and then she looks around to see, okay, is that the right response that I want to do, or am I just going to get on and go back to playing in my 3, right? So we have so much more power at that moment of startle, at that moment of trigger. But once we're triggered, once it runs through its loop, less than 90 seconds.
That's so fascinating. I actually remember speaking of that during our retreats, and that was such a big aha moment for so many. I have a question, Dr. Jill, with regards to then talk therapy. Are we then rehashing and perpetuating and prolonging the 90 seconds over and over and over again?
I think that depends on the therapist and how they strategize. I think some therapy is just move in and let's just, I'm going to sit in the presence of, as a character 1, in the presence of your character 2. And now I want you to go back into your pain and go around the block. Yeah, I think there are excellent therapists who do it differently. I had a therapist once after the stroke, for example. I had no language, but I wanted to write down in linearity that which I had no linearity for, which was my stroke of insight, the book. And so I went to her, and in that therapy, she didn't care about certain things I was saying, but she would look at my body and say, "What is your leg trying to tell us?" Right? What is it saying? And then it would move me into the experience. She essentially had me act out the morning of the stroke, because I had no linearity in language, but I had progressive experience of these moments that I had had on the morning of the stroke, and I had to wake up before I got in the shower, right? So we pieced together the pieces of that story to bring linearity to it. So all of that is simply to say, I think some therapy is exactly as you described. It's just routinizing over in that pain, but the ultimate goal is to get that not. And here's another reason why I love whole brain living is exactly that. If all the pain's in character 2, then character 2 is not going to solve its own problems. Character 2 is simply going to relive, revisit, reflect upon, be in its own experience of pain. So how do we get us through that? And we get through that by recognizing we have 3/4 of the brain is really healthy. And it's all right here, right now, in the right hemisphere, and the left hemisphere has the past and it has the future, and it can set us up for success. So if character 2 has to be willing to step into being nurtured by the other 3 parts of its brain in order to become a part of a whole and healthy brain, because it by itself is not, it is dysregulated. When character 2 is dysregulated, and so this takes us naturally into a tool that we can use to call all of them online, which is the brain huddle. And the brain huddle is BRAIN, and that's an acronym. And the goal of the brain huddle is to bring in the present moment all 4 characters. And any 4 of the characters can call the huddle. So let's say Helen's at work, I'm sitting here, and with you, I'm going to call a huddle. So as I go through the huddle, I say, Helen says, okay, character 4, are you here? And 4 is going, oh yeah, I'm good. And aren't I looking lovely today? And character 3, and I say, Pigpen, are you here? And Pigpen's going, yeah, I'm waiting patiently. And I say to little character 2, who is my pain, character 2, Abby, I call her Abby, are you here? And Abby in this moment is not triggered. So this part of ourselves, little character 2, when it gets triggered, oh my God, is it dysregulation of our nervous system? But most of the time she's not triggered. So I need to know this part of myself when she's not triggered, so that I can know when I'm bringing myself back into regulation, what does this painful part of myself feel when it's not being triggered? And so the beauty of the huddle is now I can say to Abby, Abby, are you good? And right now Abby's going, yeah, I'm good. I'm fine. Right. So, but I know what it feels like. And I'm not just going 1, 2, 3, 4. Are you all okay? I'm feeling, what do they feel like inside of my body? And I'm connecting with that piece of my identity as a human, so that by the time I'm in my character 2, I know who these other 3 parts are to reach out to. I know their skill sets. I know they're my team, and I know I'm a part of a healthy team. It's not just me against the world.
That's great. That's great. It's like sitting down with your well-trusted council members that you're going to have a go at whatever conversation you want to have.
Exactly.
When you were talking about the character 2 one, I remember back, this was probably 21 years ago, and I was going through, a lot of times like relationships, can be like some of the most challenging ones. And I remember going through a challenging relationship, and what it would feel like for me is I would sit there, and literally it would actually feel like this sort of other part of me would jump in and kind of take over everything. How I was feeling, how I was thinking. I couldn't get out of the loops. And it's just making me think about this now as I'm going to go through and practice nurturing the 4 different characters. But at that time, what I did is I actually named what that presence felt like. So I actually called it midnight because it felt like this sort of heavy, sort of just, I didn't like the feeling because it would get me into like jealousy and rage and sadness and all sorts of mixed emotions. And I even sculpted, I took clay and I actually sculpted what I thought, what it sort of looked like. And I kind of kept it on like my side as a kind of a reminder that it was always there. And whenever it felt like it was cunning, I could, because I had sort of externalized it a little bit, I was able to sort of go, whoa, 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 no, not
Beautiful.
right now, not right now. And and why I think the 90 seconds is so beautiful, because I really think people should try this, because in that, what I would find is that if I could hold off and stay like just really kind of focusing on my breathing and literally just like almost sitting down and visualizing this sort of sensation sitting beside me but not letting it come in,
Midnight.
and well,
Midnight.
midnight, and it would almost be like like training a dog or
Exactly.
something. And
It's
then
true.
within about 90 seconds, I usually give it within 2 minutes,
Yep.
the whole intensity would
Yep.
melt. Like it felt like it would dissolve. And then it was like, okay, okay, I got past that one. Didn't mean it wasn't going to pop up again at some other time. But as I kept doing that, in the practice of it, allowed me to create much more separation. So it wasn't so just taking root and then you're acting from this place that you really
Right.
don't want to act with, because then there's repercussions to that.
Absolutely. That was a beautiful description of you having a relationship with one of your characters, recognizing it, honoring it, and saying, okay, flow through me, flow out of me, but I'm not going to let you take over my consciousness. You're not going to be the lead consciousness inside of my head, because each one of these, they vibrate at a different level. They hold your body differently. You'll speak different language. One of your characters might swear a lot and the others don't swear at all. I mean, it's one of your characters might like certain colors, another character likes other colors. So it's getting to know exactly that, and then having a relationship that is open. And I mean, you can't run from these guys, right? They're inside of your head, but you can then go back if you need to revisit that for some reason, or it's like, no, it's kind of like, I'm going to put a cap on that. That doesn't need to be anymore. I've learned from that. And now I'm not going to let you consume my consciousness, because I'd rather have a good evening instead of fight with my spouse all night.
Yeah, and what was neat with it was that as going through that process, it was like initially I felt like more was this sort of, negative thing that I had to really put. But what happened with as developing the relationship, it changed. It's like it actually started to become more almost like a demanding kid, like a demanding child, a little bit more like myself. I could visualize as being almost little bit more reactive and more, and so I could actually love it, like genuinely love it without sort of, but just knowing it's got its place and sort of, yeah,
Right.
I think it's really beautiful. I hadn't even really necessarily thought about that as I was going through your book, but it just sort of came up
Yeah.
right now. Very much, I
Yeah.
think, in alignment.
Yeah, that's the beauty. What you did was you differentiated a part of yourself, and it just happens to have a neuroanatomical foundation. And a result of that, it has a predictable collection of skill sets. And you have one, and I have one, and Tia has one, and everybody listening has one. But the question is, can I differentiate? And then you said you decided, you came in and you loved it. And that loving part of yourself, that's your character 4.
Mm.
And so when you're trying to meditate, to be able to know, what I'm really doing is I am stepping in and embodying the consciousness inside of me that is love. Because in unconditional love, there's just absolutely no judgment. And the whole left brain is all about, that's what it does well. It's designed at a cellular level to create judgment so it can differentiate in relationship to us in the external world, or we exist in chaos. And we cannot be functional human beings and exist in chaos, which I think politically we kind of showed ourselves for the last few years. But isn't that an interesting lesson that we learned at the same time?
Yeah.
So chaos becomes in that character one, it doesn't work for the character one. The character one needs order, it wants linearity, and it can accomplish across time using these genius skill sets that it has. Oh my gosh, I can organize the external world. Wow. Now imagine if I was an amoeba, right? And it's like, what is my relationship with the external world? The only relationship I have is, attraction toward or repel away from. So we've come a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Um, I mentioned addiction before. What's different with addiction from just the regular aspects of trying to deal with our four different characters and support the different ones? What's going on with addiction that can make it so sticky?
So, first of all, addiction, again, we're going to go right back to the more often you run a circuit, the stronger that circuit becomes, and then it begins to run on automatic. It becomes habitual. So, with addiction, there's actually a group of cells deep inside of that insular cortex, deep inside of there, which is craving. And as soon as I have craving, I have a tendency toward the creation of a circuit I want to run over and over and over again. So if I crave menthol and I want to smoke, or I crave, cocaine or whatever it is I'm addicted to, I have that craving experience, and then it just consumes my whole brain. And it consumes my whole brain because at a biological level, this is the reward system. And who doesn't want to feel internal reward, right? So the game that we're playing at a cellular level with things that we become addicted to is that when I engage, I get the hit of reward. And in that hit of reward, I like that. And it doesn't really matter what I'm addicted to, the addiction circuitry is going to be inside of that character two tissue as it relates to brainstem centers, which is, as fundamentally raw. And if you take off that character one tissue and you move into the deeper tissues of the brainstem here and that emotional tissue in the insular cortex of craving, this is pretty deep. This is thalamus. And inside of that thalamus, which is also bilateral, this is driving force. This is kind of root of all being. And so the way I think about us as humans is that the cells, what the cells are and the relationships that the cells have inside of the brain in relationship to the other cells is the root, and then the behavior of who we are in the world is like the tree limbs. So the roots of what we are the cells and the communication between those cells. And now that we know about mycelium, isn't that a beautiful thing? And so the relationship of that neural network ultimately looking like the behavior in how we interact with one another. We can change the behavior and impact the roots, but if we really understand what's going on in our addiction and we know that it's in the character two, then we have a character one who can come in and say, okay, this is a behavior we'd like to stop. This is a habit we'd like to break. So character one can say, so we're not going to go to the store and we're not going to buy the cigarettes, or we're not going to have any of whatever it is we're addicted to available and easy for us to access. So character one, and I'm going to talk to my friends and I'm going to talk to my sponsor and I'm going to talk to other people so that when I feel little character two pounding strong, I can go to someone else to help me reinforce the other parts of my brain. So I can reinforce it like that. I can, with character three, I can say every time I feel the need to get a hit of something or to get my cigarette fix or my menthol, I'm going to walk around the block and I'm going to balance something in my hands that takes my brain, and I'm going to preoccupy myself so I can get past that 90-second desire again of the craving loop. Or I might go into prayer. I might pray into my state of being in my character four and really remember, oh my gosh, this body, every cell in my body has DNA and its own little consciousness, of which I'm some 50 trillion beautiful molecular geniuses. And I'm going to spread my consciousness beyond just that cycle that says, I want it, I want it, I want it, and I want it now. and I'm going to move myself into feeling as big as the universe and really shifting my consciousness away from all the energy being in that character two, and pull the energy out of that into the other parts of my brain so I can self-rescue. I mean, it's great if you've got, somebody who's going to support you from the outside, but you got to be able to, you have to learn how to heal yourself using your four characters. Because let's say you're going to now go into rehab. Okay, well, character one can go through rehab and it can jump through the hoops and it can do whatever and it can look clean and it can get out. But character one isn't the part that's addicted. Character 3 and 4 can go to rehab and look like, you've kicked the habit. But if character 2 is not willing to become a part of the team and go through rehab too, you're probably not going to kick that addiction.
That's brilliant, Dr. Jill. I love it. That is like the epitome of self-help. Like really,
Yes.
it's like you are recruiting aspects of yourself I totally picture like different parts of the brain just kind of putting out their hand, and bringing everybody in. That's
Exactly.
beautiful.
And I just think of what a beautiful job you've done in fulfilling your mission in life, in coming back from your experience as a right brain dominant person to now marrying it with who you were as a child, and presenting this information in such a user-friendly way. Like really, if I had science teachers like yourselves, I don't think I would ever want to get out of school.
Thank you. Thank you. I truly feel that, the TED Talk was momentous in my life. It exploded into the world, but it didn't do what I wanted it to do. I wanted people, I walked around the world and people recognized me in Hong Kong and Antarctica and Scotland. I mean, I became instantaneously famous. And with that, because of the TED Talk, a certain level of reverence. People were just loved with me, and it was just beautiful. But that wasn't what I wanted. What I wanted was them to have that love for themselves, for what they are as a life force, and for every other human they met. And it just, I didn't know how to communicate it. I didn't know how to do it in a way that would land and grow. And I truly believe that whole brain living is the work of my life. So thank you for the conversation, and thank you for engaging, and thank you for caring, and thank you for being so kind.
Absolutely our pleasure. Dr. Jill, before we finish up here, I want to know where we can send people to learn more about it.
I wanted to also
about technology really quick.
Technology and the story that she had shared, you had shared in your book. I thought it was
maybe
so moving and touching. And as far as how we can even best support loved ones who are passing over.
Yes. It's I share in there the journey of both my friend and my mother. And my mom was a really strong character, 1, 2, 3, and 4. She actually 3, not so much, 4 more. But when my mother received her diagnosis of cancer, and my mother was, oh my God, she was my best friend. She was just my truest companion. After she reared me once, and then after the stroke, she reared me a second time. And wow, what a woman she was. And then she got this diagnosis, and she said to me, Jill, I'm 89. I'm good with that. I've lived a great life. And I want our time together and the rest of my time here to be one of love, not one of sadness. And I said to her, okay, I get that, but I'm still losing my mommy. So little character 2 or little character 3, they're going to come in and they're going to like cry once in a while. I'm going to need you to hold me. She says, once in a while, that's fine. So we both stepped into character 4, loving of her. And I let everybody know that, what was going on with mom. And mom had wanted to have what we call a box party. And what we did was we got the box that she would be cremated in, and we put it on my dining room table, and we had a big party. And we decorated this box of love. And Gigi was there, and she was on hospice care at that time. And they said she could have a martini. So she's sipping away on a martini. partying away, party. And people would go in and she would, they would love on her, and everybody knew, we're not doing this in character 2 sadness. We're doing this with character 4 love. That's what she's requested. And everybody was game for that. And it was fascinating that people knew they could do that. And for them to get to know, yes, this is my little character 2. Yes, we are sad, but tonight we're celebrating this magnificent life. And so I actually have video footage of my mother dancing around her box of love with both some of my friends, some of her friends, and my brother to a song called Stompin' at the Savoy. And that was her good go-to lift me up song. And she said, when you push that button to cremate me, I want Dancing at the Savoy to be on the music box. So we did, and we celebrated this life in a way that was so uplifting and meaningfully and connecting for all of us. It was just a beautiful way to say goodbye to a beautiful life well lived.
So beautiful. It's just, yeah, choosing how we want to show up in the world. So,
Yeah.
Dr. Jill, where can people learn more about the work that you're doing?
So drjilltaylor.com is my website. Right now we're we're in the change of that. So in the next couple of months, whole brain living has become we're following yoga into prisons. We're following yoga into 12-step programming. We're working with judges and attorneys and hospice care workers. We're working with relationship therapists. The best way to reach out to me is Dr. Jill at drjilltaylor.com. I'm very user friendly. We're building a team. It is my goal to empower you to educate and work with your networks, because I can create the buffet from which we all dine, but you get to be the rock star in your own field, because I'm busy. But I'm more than happy to empower you to be that rock star of whole brain living in your world, because it's just so beautiful. It's already in 21 languages, and I'm just thrilled that I get to bring something positive and healthy into the world like this.
Thank you, Dr. Jill. Dr. Jill, if it's okay with you, I wanted to ask you as a neuroscientist about the pineal gland. It's spoken so often in so many other different ancient traditions. What's your take on it?
Oh, I love the pineal gland. Okay, you ask any typical neuroscientist and they're going to say, oh, it's a little vestigial organ and it has nothing to do, right? Well, we just realized that the appendix.
Well, your part 4 is online. That's why I'm asking you.
What? Say again?
Your individual part 4 character is online, so that's why I'm asking you.
Oh, okay. So here's the thing about the pineal. When you look at the brain, okay, let me put my brain back together again, because I actually need it for this answer to be good. This is going to go here. This is going to go here. This is going to go here. And this is going to go there. Okay. Here's your brain. Okay. Now, the brain's bilateral, 2 halves, and you open it up like so. And there isn't one on here. Yes. Here we go. Little pineal gland. Now, the pineal gland is this little piece of tissue. First of all, there's only one. Just about every other structure in the brain, there's 2. It's bilateral. The pineal gland is one structure, and it's about the size of a little lima bean, and it drips down, and the liquid of the ventricular system massages it, and the cerebral spinal fluid flows around the brain and down around the spinal cord, and it's in constant motion. And we're making new cerebral spinal fluid, and we're absorbing old cerebral spinal fluid. So this is the life energy of the liquid movement. Everything else in there is solid tissue. And so it's moving around. And then here you have this little pineal gland flopping out there. And another thing about that is that it has these little crenations, these little solid masses. Okay, most solid, you can always find a pineal on an MRI because of these little solid masses. So for some reason, we have this little single flapper sitting in that cerebral spinal fluid, staying abreast of everything that's going on inside of the nervous system. And it has these little solid masses. So anything that's going, but it's vestigial, but realistically, it's going to be sensitive to anything vibrational, anything frequency based. everything that might be in a world that we do not yet understand because we cannot measure it. So that's, I love science. I love how things work. But as long as all we're doing is we're looking at the pineal gland through the eyes of the scientific method, then it's just this chunk of tissue flapping in the cerebral spinal fluid with these little lumps, and we don't know what it does.
I'm so curious to see as these bridge more and sort of the science and metaphysics kind of gradually explain and collaborate. It's exciting to see what'll come up. Dr. Jill, thank you so much. We'll have all of those links in the show notes so people can check out your work, and we'll have to do this again someday because
it was an absolute delight.
so much fun. Thank you so much.